In the royal palace's training hall, we see our protagonist, Castle, practicing sword fighting with his childhood friend, Klaus. Their fellow knights are watching and placing bets on who will win. However, Klaus is much stronger than Castle and defeats him as usual. Klaus tells Castle that he needs to train more and improve his skills to be promoted to a full knight instead of remaining a trainee. Castle responds that Klaus only beats him because he is taller. To prove him wrong, Klaus strikes him down and defeats him completely. Gran and Fleeg laugh at Castle, and Klaus tells them to get back to their own work. Castle leaves, and they tell him he is a great knight but just needs a bit more training under Klaus to become unbeatable. Castle and Fleeg then go on their patrol in the city. They notice that the people seem tense and soon discover the reason. A member of the Black Goblin race has appeared. Everyone is surprised to see someone like this in the kingdom of Orphelia. Castle observes the goblin, who looks powerful and formidable. The people ask Castle and Fleeg to drive the goblin out of the city because his presence must be a bad omen. But Castle replies that the goblin hasn't done anything to be expelled. Fleeg calms the people down and tells them he will inform the leadership immediately so they can handle the situation. Castle then goes to rest and meets his childhood friend, Fry, who is buying apples from the market. Castle calls out to her, and they sit together, reminiscing about old times while eating apples. Fry worries about him, but he reassures her that he is fine since Klaus is with him and watching out for him. Fry tells him that he needs to train seriously as well so he can finish his training and become an excellent knight. The scene then shifts to the princess of the kingdom walking in the royal palace. She sees the royal advisor entering the king's chamber, where the king is shown to be ill and unable to move. The advisor informs the king that the scouting team has discovered monsters in the king's forest. The king immediately orders the advisor to eliminate the monsters before they pose a threat to the kingdom. At that moment, a nobleman arrives at the palace accompanied by the Black Goblin. The guards are surprised, but they allow the goblin to enter because he is with the nobleman. The noble and the goblin then attend the meeting the advisor has called with the nobles to discuss how to handle the monsters. The nobleman, Moriham, suggests hiring the special black carriage squad led by Rihei to investigate the situation in the forest instead of risking the knights. However, the nobles reject the idea, as the kingdom of Orphelia has long been in conflict with the Black Goblins, and they cannot trust them now. The advisor asks Rihei why he would help them. Rihei responds that they are a band of mercenaries and only care about getting paid, nothing more. The advisor also refuses Moriham's proposal and decides that sending a team of knights would be the best solution. That evening, Klaus informs Castle that he won't be able to train him for a while because he and the squad are going on a mission to investigate the forest due to the monster's appearance. Castle becomes worried about his friends, but they reassure him that they will be fine and promise to bring him some of the strange foods he likes when they return. That night, the Black Carriage Squad, composed of black goblins, is seen making plans. It is revealed that they are seeking revenge against Orphelia's nobles for oppressing them for years. Everything they are doing now is part of their scheme to take control of the kingdom. The next day, Klaus and the team arrive at the forest. The area is unnaturally quiet, but suddenly, skeletal monsters appear and attack them. They fight bravely, but the monsters overwhelm them, leaving only Klaus and Gran. Klaus orders Gran to escape and inform the palace while he holds off the monsters. Gran immediately flees, while Klaus continues fighting the seemingly endless skeletal creatures. Gran reaches the palace and reports everything that happened, stating that the number of monsters in the forest is unknown. The nobles panic as they try to figure out how to eliminate this threat. Meanwhile, Castle learns about what happened to his friends and that only Gran has returned. He becomes deeply worried about Klaus but still holds on to hope that he is alive. He decides to go rescue him himself. At that moment, Fry also arrives, asking about Klaus. She is shocked to learn that he hasn't returned and decides to accompany Castle since she is a mage. Castle tries to convince her to stay behind until he returns, but it's no use. Castle and Fry set out to search for Klaus and find the bodies of the fallen team lying on the ground. Castle and Fry are shocked by the sight and look for Klaus, but unfortunately, they only find his armor. At that moment, Castle decides to venture deeper into the forest to search for Klaus. However, a large number of skeletal monsters appear and attack them. Castle immediately charges at the skeletons and orders Fry to run away at once. Castle fights off the skeletons and manages to push them back. He then decides to escape quickly with Fry. But at that moment, the leader of the skeletons appears and tells him, "Let's have some fun, boy." She launches a magical attack on Castle, sending him flying with ease. She is surprised that she defeated him so effortlessly since he resembles Klaus. At that moment, it is revealed that she also fought Klaus. The skeletons quickly attack Castle and Fry, but Fry uses her shield to block the attack immediately. She continues to hold off their attacks until the skeletons close in on her, about to finish her off. However, at the last moment, Rihei appears and swiftly swiftly eliminates the skeletons with incredible speed. The black carriage squad arrives, and its members fight the skeletons, easily defeating them due to their astonishing strength. Rihei himself battles the monster leader in an intense fight, which amazes Castle. However, the leader eventually escapes, bidding farewell to Castle, telling him not to worry because they will play together again. Castle thanks Rihei and his team for saving them and introduces himself and Fry. Rihei asks him what he is doing there since he is not part of the scouting team. Castle replies that they came to search for survivors from the squad and that he is sure there are still survivors. However, Rihei does not care about his words and leaves them behind. Castle is saddened and tells Fry that he came to rescue Klaus but could do nothing, not even defeat the monsters they encountered. At that moment, a group of adventurers appears before Castle and Fry. Castle becomes wary of them and asks who they are. They reassure him that they are adventurers, and the mage introduces herself as Cleo, while the other is Roy, a knight, and Cleo's bodyguard. Fry asks them what they are doing there. Cleo responds that they were searching for them and asks them to follow. Castle and Fry follow them and arrive at the edge of a cliff. Cleo tells them that Dominix is the one who requested them to be brought here. Castle and Fry are astonished that the Great Tower Mage is the one who summoned them and ask why he did so. Roy answers that Dominix himself will explain. They then take Castle and Fry to the Sky Island where the Tower of the Sage is located. Cleo uses her magic, and they are transported to the island. Castle and Fry are amazed by the magnificent place and head to meet the sage Dominix. Castle and Fry meet the sage Dominix, and it is revealed that they have known him since childhood at the orphanage. Dominix welcomes them, and Fry tells him they always thought he was just an ordinary mage who occasionally visited the orphanage. Dominix replies that he had to hide his identity from people to avoid trouble. He then tells them that he brought them there because he wants them to meet someone. He leads them into a room where they are stunned to find Klaus, wounded and lying on the bed. Both Castle and Fry are relieved and overjoyed. It is revealed that Dominix had always been watching over the three of them since childhood, which is why he knew what had happened to Klaus and that they would come looking for him. At that moment, Klaus wakes up, surprised to see Castle and Fry. Castle explains what happened, and Klaus is relieved to hear that Gran made it back to the castle. Sage Dominix asks Castle and Fry to stay the night and instructs Cleo and Roy to take care of them. That evening, Castle sits in the garden, feeling down and deep in thought. Fry approaches him to comfort him. Castle tells her that after fighting the monsters, he has decided that he must become stronger because he will never accept losing someone dear to him again. The next morning, Rihei goes to the palace and informs the nobles that he has eliminated the monsters in the forest, presenting them with proof, the head of a skeletal monster. Nobleman Moriham states that they must trust the efficiency of the Black Carriage Squad from now on and always rely on them in battles against monsters. As the nobles are about to object, the advisor calms the situation, thanks Rihei for his efforts, and asks him to leave and remove the monster's head from public view. It is then revealed that the vile nobleman Moriham is also involved with the Black Goblins in their plan to take control of the kingdom and seize the position of royal advisor. The following morning, Sage Dominix summons Castle and Fry. Dominix asks Castle if his mother ever told him anything about his father. Castle replies that she did not. Dominix then tells him that he was the one who asked her to keep it a secret. He then reveals to Castle that he is the son of King Kyle, the heroic king who fought the Monster King, Lord of Darkness Angmund, and defeated him 100 years ago. Castle and Fry are both stunned. Dominix tells Castle that he is now worthy of inheriting the great sword of the hero and assures him that he believes he is capable of handling this responsibility. However, Castle is in shock and tells him that he must be lying. How could his father be King Kyle, who died 100 years ago, when his mother also died long ago in a monster attack? The sage replies that he will tell him everything and that the story began 100 years ago when King Kyle was still alive. At that time, he was the crown prince of the kingdom and an exceptionally skilled knight, even more skilled than the Black Goblins. We see the prince training with a Black Goblin named Elia, who is his instructor. She praises his training and how skilled he has become. Dominix arrives, pleased with their progress, and tells them to rest, then takes them to have a meal. It is revealed that Elia and Kyle are very close friends, and she scolds him for sneaking into the city all the time to see how the people live, what they eat, and what they drink. She tells him that he would never understand his people's struggles from inside the palace and that, as a member of the royal family, he must fulfill his duty to them. It is revealed that Kyle was always curious about the lives of the city's people and loved to explore them. It is also revealed that Elia is his half-sister and that she constantly worried about him, which is why she always argued with him about sneaking out. We see Kyle with Dominix in the study, where Kyle asks Dominix why there is poverty among the people despite the kingdom being in a time of peace. Dominix replies that the war between the nations lasted for a long time, which cost them a great deal of money. Furthermore, many families lost their breadwinners in battle. It is revealed that King Kyle continued striving and working hard to improve the kingdom. Over time, he married Queen Arlette, Castle's mother. Dominix tells Castle that Queen Arlette is his mother. Everyone is astonished and speechless at the story Dominix is telling. Fry asks how Castle's mother was alive 100 years ago. Dominix replies that he will explain that later. He continues by saying that Kyle and Arlette lived happily until they were forced apart. The nobles separated them because Arlette was an obstacle to the political marriage they had arranged for King Kyle. From that moment on, Kyle was trapped in misery. Moreover, monsters began to appear and attack the kingdom. At that time, Kyle and the knights went out to fight the monsters and defeated them. Meanwhile, King Median Eye, Kyle's father, passed away, making Kyle the sole ruler of the kingdom. Kyle then worked on raising the morale of Orphelia's army and met the fairy leader, Blorin, and the goblin leader, Ayatollah, forming an alliance with them to defeat the monsters. The battle began, but the monsters had the advantage in numbers over the human army. Eventually, Kyle found Arlette in one of the war shelters, and she was pregnant with Castle at the time. Kyle was overjoyed and told her that if it were a boy, they would name him Castle. Later, the great Lua appeared and bestowed upon King Kyle the legendary sword, Aya, so he could fight the Dark Lord Angmund and save the world from his evil. Kyle then gathered the army leaders and informed them that once the Red Moon appeared, the Monster King would emerge to destroy the world, but he would use the legendary sword to defeat him. At the same time, Elia dedicated herself to studying arcane magic. Back in the present, Dominix continues his story, but Fry and Klaus interrupt him, saying that Fry once tried to create a false holy sword and was condemned for it. Dominix confirms that this is true and that the people saw Elia's actions as a challenge to the will of the great Lua. Fry then asks why Elia would even attempt to create a false holy sword. Dominix explains that Elia was merely trying to fulfill her promise to Kyle. That is why she continued studying magic until the day the Dark Lord appeared. Elia rushed to aid Kyle, but unfortunately, she was slain by the Dark Lord on her way to him. At that time, Kyle and his comrades fought King Angmund. However, after the battle, both King Kyle and King Angmund disappeared, leaving only the legendary sword Aya behind. With that, peace returned to the world once more, and this was the story of King Kyle, Castle's father. Castle and his friends are astonished by the story of his father, who sacrificed himself to save the world. Dominix then reveals that the rest of King Kyle's comrades sealed the legendary sword afterward, with each one of them holding a part of the key to its seal. He also tells them that the Black Goblins were exiled from the kingdom at that time because of Elia's condemnation for forging a false sword. The scene shifts to the Black Carriage Squad. One of their members, Tam, returns with food for the team. They ask if he faced any problems with the merchants, but he reassures them that the traders treated him well as soon as he mentioned Noble Moriham's name. Tam then distributes the food, and they begin their meal. They then talk about life during King Kyle's reign when they lived peacefully in the kingdom. However, that was over 100 years ago. One of them remarks that everything changed after what happened with Elia. It is revealed that Rihei is greatly disturbed by the mere mention of her name and states that it is the truth. Elia is the reason for the goblins' oppression. Time passes, and Tam asks Rihei about the story he once told him about Elia. He wonders if Elia ever considered that her actions would bring harm to all the black goblins. Rihei asks why he is asking this. Tam replies that he wishes he could go back in time to save his parents and siblings from being killed. He wishes he could return to strike Elia and make her see reason. Rihei responds that there is no way to turn back time and that what Elia did no longer matters. What matters now is that they were oppressed in Orphelia. Their blood was spilled, and so they must take their revenge on the kingdom. The story returns to the group as they sit with Dominix. Castle asks Dominix to tell him more about his mother and what she had been doing for the past 100 years after the war. Dominix explains that they had tried using the legendary sword many times over the years, but no one could wield it properly. That is when they realized that only its rightful heirs, those who carried the blood of King Kyle, could wield it. Since they feared the return of the Monster King, they placed Arlette in a deep slumber for 100 years so that when the Monster King reappeared, he would find the sword's heir. Castle is shocked by what he hears. Dominix tells him that as soon as she awoke, she gave birth. At that time, monsters attacked the village and killed her. Since both of Castle's parents had died, Dominix sent him to the orphanage. Everyone is stunned by his words, and Fry says that his visits to them in the past were not just random. Dominix replies that he had been watching over their growth the entire time. Dominix then tells Castle that the Monster King's return is near and that no one knows exactly what kind of damage he suffered, meaning there is a possibility he could return. Furthermore, the reappearance of monsters is certainly not a good sign. Kyle agrees to prepare for the coming war to protect his loved ones. He asks Dominic's where he can find the legendary sword. Dominic's replies that the sword's seal must be broken first, and to do that, he must meet Lauren, the great sage of the forest. Dominic's tells them that he wanted to accompany them on their journey, but unfortunately, he cannot leave the tower. He then calls upon Cleo and Roy and asks them to go with Castle and Fry on their new adventure. Castle and Fry go to inform Klaus of what happened and that they must leave to find the legendary sword and break its seal. They bid him farewell and set out the next morning, with Cleo eagerly excited for the new adventure. Castle and the team reach the borders of Eldora Forest. Cleo feels bored because she wanted to visit better cities. Fry tells her that Eldora Forest is also a great forest and not just anyone can enter it so easily. However, Cleo remains unconvinced. Suddenly, a group of skeletal monsters appears and attacks them immediately. Castle tries to fend them off, but Cleo stops him, telling him to leave this to Roy. Roy charges in with all his strength, displaying incredible skill as he defeats all the monsters in seconds. Unfortunately, another wave of monsters appears and attacks them again. The team is caught off guard when powerful arrows shoot from deep within the forest, striking the skeletons and eliminating them. They see that it is an elf who was sent by the great Lauren to guide them to her. However, the elf does not accept humans at all and holds clear hostility toward them. Castle and his team have no choice but to follow her. They are amazed by the strange sights and astonishing creatures in the forest. Over time, Castle grows concerned and asks the elf who she is exactly and where the great Lauren is. She introduces herself as Celine, the princess of the elves, and says that the great Lauren sent her to guide them. They continue their journey quickly, but Castle and his team get separated from Celine and become lost in the forest. At that moment, they encounter a tree spirit named Chibi. He is small, adorable, and loves to play. Chibi leads them to the princess. Meanwhile, the princess is searching for them in the forest, but Chibi appears before her, bringing Castle and his friends with him. Celine asks Chibi why he is there and thanks him for guiding them to her. Chibi wants to stay with Castle and his friends, but Celine tells him that humans are dangerous and that he must stay away from them. However, Chibi refuses and continues the journey with them. Cleo is delighted with him and plays with him. As night begins to fall, they decide to camp in the forest for the night. That evening, Castle spars with Chibi, teaching him how to fight. Chibi is extremely happy. Celine is surprised at how well they get along. When Castle becomes tired and decides to rest, Chibi continues playing with Cleo. Celine tells Castle that Chibi has become very fond of him and that he must see something in him that they do not. She then asks him who he really is. Castle replies that he is no one, just someone who wants to become stronger so he can protect those dear to him. That is why he must meet the great Lauren to obtain power. Celine then gets up to patrol the area while the others rest. Suddenly, a strange disturbance occurs in the forest, and they find that the tree spirits have become extremely aggressive. They do not understand why until they spot a monstrous creature lurking deep within the forest. The creature attacks and kills a tree spirit. Chibi becomes enraged, determined to avenge his fellow tree spirits. He charges at the monster. Castle tries to stop him, but it is no use. The monster grabs Chibi. The team tries to rescue him, but their efforts are in vain, and soon the monster captures Castle as well. The monster prepares to devour Castle. In a desperate move, Chibi throws his wooden sword at the creature, striking it hard and saving Castle. However, the monster becomes furious and completely destroys Chibi. Everyone is in shock. Castle is consumed by rage and repeatedly strikes the monster, cutting it down completely. He continues to slash at it relentlessly until Celine stops him and calms him down, telling him that he has done enough to avenge Chibi. After a few minutes, Castle calms down and his friends rest. Lauren arrives and thanks him and his companions for saving the forest from the monster. Castle replies that there is no need for thanks since he couldn't save Chibi. She explains to him that Chibi was the most curious being in the forest and that he is surely happy now because of his journey with them. She then asks him why he has come to the forest. Castle replies that he needs the power of the legendary sword, which is why he has come to ask her to break the seal. Celine is shocked to learn that Castle is the heir to the legendary sword, but Lauren responds that she cannot break the seal just yet. The group is stunned, and Cleo tells her that they traveled all this way because Dominic's told them that she was the one who could unseal it. Lauren explains that if Castle is truly the heir, then the moment the seal is broken, the sword's power will surge within him. This power is immense, and if he is not ready for it, it could destroy his body and soul. She asks him if he is prepared for this power. Castle replies that nothing matters to him except protecting those dear to him. Lauren tells them to rest for the night and that they will discuss it tomorrow. Celine takes them to their rooms, but Fry asks her to show them Chibi's favorite place so they can bury his core there. Celine takes them to the spot where Chibi always played, and they bury his core there. As the friends rest in their rooms, Castle slips away and goes outside. Lauren asks Celine for her opinion on Castle and whether she thinks he is worthy of the legendary sword's power. Celine hesitates, recalling Castle's actions and his anger during the battle. She replies that she is unsure. Lauren smiles and gives her time to think until the morning. Celine walks away and finds Castle sitting by Chibi's grave, deeply saddened, apologizing for not being able to protect him. He promises that he will become stronger and protect everyone. Celine is moved by the sight. At that moment, a small bud begins to grow from Chibi's core. Castle is confused, but Celine approaches him and explains that it is natural for a sprout to emerge after the death of plant spirits. However, it is unusual for it to appear so quickly, which means that Chibi is surely doing this to bring them happiness. Castle thanks Chibi and promises him that he will grow stronger. The next morning, the group meets with Lauren again. She asks Celine for her decision. The group is confused and doesn't understand what decision she means. Celine replies that until today, she always believed that humans were a destructive race that threatened all forms of life in the forest. However, that belief changed, though not completely, when she met Castle and his friends. They defended the forest against demons without thinking of themselves or the danger they faced. Because of that, she now believes that Castle is truly worthy of the legendary sword's power. Castle and his friends are thrilled by Celine's words, and Castle thanks her. At that moment, Lauren smiles and decides to use her magic to break the seal. She does so, and everyone is astonished by the dazzling sight. Cleo becomes excited and asks Castle if he feels an incredible surge of power within him or if anything has changed. Castle replies that nothing has happened and that everything feels normal. Lauren tells him not to be impatient, saying that he will soon discover and feel the power within him. She then informs them that 2 seals remain before the sword can be fully freed. The second seal is held by Ayatollah, the goblin leader, in the Ogria Mountains. The third seal is much farther away, in the possession of Pavel, in the Mountain of the Frozen Winds. The group becomes excited about their next journey and quickly prepares to set out. However, a sudden warning spreads through the forest about the presence of another monster. The group rushes out and is shocked to find that the monster they killed is alive again. Celine explains that certain monsters have the ability to leave behind seeds in the soil before they die, allowing them to return to life. Celine prepares to attack the monster with her arrows, but Lauren stops her, telling her to just watch this time. Castle, filled with rage, charges at the monster with full force, with Roy assisting him. The group is stunned by Castle's astonishing strength as he defeats the monster in mere seconds. Lauren and Celine thank Castle once again for saving the forest. They bid farewell to the group as Castle and his friends embark on their journey. The scene shifts to Noble Moriham, who is sitting with Rihei as they plan their next move in their scheme to take over the kingdom. Moriham tells Rihei that they have now become heroes in the eyes of the townspeople and that he is close to receiving the title of knight. He adds that the other nobles are now begging him to send the Black Carriage Squad to eliminate the monsters in the king's forest. He states that they will surely agree to his request, ensuring that the nobles remain indebted to them forever. Back in the forest, Lauren and Celine are returning home when Lauren notices that Celine is very concerned about Castle and his friends. She asks her if it wouldn't have been better for her to go with them. Celine becomes flustered and replies that her main duty is to protect the forest from any danger. Lauren smiles and tells her, yes, of course. Castle and his friends continue their journey toward their new destination, which are still very far from where they are now. Roy suggests that they gather as much information as possible while traveling to their destination. The group agrees with his suggestion and decides to keep the fact that Castle is the heir to the legendary sword a secret from everyone. At that moment, the monster leader appears before them. The group is stunned by her sudden presence. She greets Castle. Castle tells her to get out of their way, but she uses her incredible magic and attacks them. Castle and his friends fight back against the attack. She then strikes again with her powerful claws, but Castle blocks her attack. She notices the power of the legendary sword within Castle and asks him where he got this strength from. As usual, Cleo slips up and blurts out that he is the son of King Kyle. The monster leader suddenly understands the situation and pauses for a moment. She tells Castle that the legendary sword is nothing more than a curse from the great Lua and that he, too, will forever be in Lua's grasp. She then uses her magic and vanishes from the area, leaving Castle feeling uneasy and confused about what she meant. The group continues their journey and arrives at the first town along their path. Cleo is very excited to visit the town. They enter the marketplace and are amazed by all the delicious food and fascinating goods. Cleo recklessly spends all her money on food, and they are also surprised by Castle's strange eating habits, such as grilled spider. Everyone enjoys the food. Cleo then suggests visiting the best place to admire the town's scenery, Crowl Fountain. However, Roy refuses, saying they don't have time for such things and must keep moving quickly. Castle agrees with him. Cleo keeps trying to convince them until they finally give in and decide to stay in the town for the night. Unfortunately, Cleo has spent all their money recklessly, leaving them with no funds to pay for a place to stay. They try to think of a solution to their problem. Fry tells them that it looks like they'll have to sleep outside tonight. Cleo protests, saying she wants to sleep in a comfortable bed. Everyone gets annoyed with her, and Roy tells her she has no right to complain. Cleo reassures them that they'll surely find work to earn some money and rent a room for the night. She rushes off to find jobs for everyone. She manages to find a place willing to hire them, telling the group that the owner will pay them for their work and also let them stay in an empty room. Cleo will work in the kitchen, Roy will be a waiter, Fry will prepare tea, and Castle will be in charge of security and chopping firewood. Everyone starts working. In the kitchen, Cleo prepares food and uses her magic to ignite the fire. The other cooks are amazed that she is a mage and ask her to show them some of her magical abilities. As usual, Cleo gets carried away and shows off, using her fire magic again. However, this time, her power increases slightly, and she becomes too excited, nearly setting the place on fire. That evening, they find themselves fired from their jobs and sit by the fountain. Cleo is very upset. Roy tells her that she needs to think carefully about her actions because she is a genius with a bright future in the Tower of the Sage. She must prepare herself properly. The problem is that she knows nothing about the outside world, and because of her nature, she can be extremely reckless. Castle asks Roy what she has done before. Roy replies that she once set an entire building on fire, though luckily, no one was harmed. Dominic's later said he had discovered a new way for Cleo to properly harness her abilities. The next morning, Castle wakes up, and Fry hands him a letter from Roy, saying that he has gone to look for work to earn money so they can continue their journey. However, they soon realize that Cleo is also missing. At that moment, Cleo appears and excitedly tells them that she has found a suitable job for making money at a restaurant on the outskirts of town run by a woman named Wolf. Meanwhile, Roy searches for someone but is unable to find them. He then decides to sell his dagger in exchange for money. Castle and his friends head to the restaurant on the outskirts. However, the place is old, run down, and in complete disrepair. They meet the frightening owner of the establishment and immediately begin working, exhausting themselves in the process. They successfully clean up the place and restore it to look as good as new. After finishing their work, they take a break, and Lady Wolf serves them food, as they must be hungry by now. They thank her and find the meal delicious. Everyone is happy, and Lady Wolf tells them that it has been a long time since she last cooked because her restaurant is in the outskirts, so she has no customers. Castle suggests that she promote her restaurant, but she replies that she is satisfied with the way things are because she cooks using charcoal, which means she wouldn't be able to cook for many people at once. That evening, Cleo sits outside, reminiscing about her mother and what she used to say to her. At that moment, a large number of monsters appear, heading toward the restaurant. The group prepares for battle. Castle and Cleo rush out to fight the monsters, taking down as many as they can. However, the monsters' numbers are overwhelming, and they break into the building. Fry quickly helps Lady Wolf escape and tells her to run. At that moment, Lady Wolf decides to help Cleo in the fight, distracting the monster. The monster turns toward her, and just as Cleo is about to use her magic to defeat it, she remembers what happened last time because of her magic and hesitates, refusing to use it. She struggles to fight the monsters without her magic. Her friends, along with Lady Wolf, encourage her to use her magic and finish off the monsters. Cleo finally regains her confidence and uses her magic to save her friends, unleashing a spectacular magical attack that eliminates all the monsters. Everyone is overjoyed. Roy arrives shortly after and tells them that he has secured money for them. Cleo immediately rushes over to take it, but Fry snatches it away, saying that she will be in charge of their finances this time. The next morning, they bid farewell to Lady Wolf and continue their journey. Back in the kingdom, the Black Carriage Squad fiercely eliminates the monsters in the King's Forest, performing exceptionally well. Rihei delivers the report to Noble Moriham, confirming that the mission was successfully completed. Moriham then informs him that Noble Bell wants to meet him to discuss important matters. Rihei is surprised and asks, "With me?" Moriham replies that Bell is currently with the astrologer because the kingdom will soon launch an official campaign to purge the demons. This would surely benefit Rihei, allowing him to display his full strength. On his way to meet Belle, Rihei overhears the princess talking to the astrologer about the day the Monster King will appear. She refers to it as the terrifying day that will haunt humanity. Belle is frustrated because this time, the Monster King will return, but there will be no legendary sword or King Kyle. The princess reassures him that the Knights of Orphelia will protect the kingdom in place of her father. Rihei then presents himself to them and states that he heard they wanted to speak with him. Belle replies that he wants him to meet the princess, who is the supreme commander of the Knight Corps. The princess introduces herself and tells him that she has heard about the Black Carriage Squad's achievements. Because of this, she wants them to join the Knight Corps. Rihei agrees, saying it would be an honor for them. She informs him that there will be an important meeting tomorrow and asks him to attend. Rihei returns home and informs the squad that they will be joining the knights. Everyone is delighted by their major progress, but Tam is displeased. He asks, "Have you all forgotten our goal? We need to take control of the kingdom." One of the team members reassures him, saying, "Don't worry. Joining them will make it easier for us to deceive them and take over even faster." Rihei instructs them to be cautious with their actions and avoid causing any trouble in the city, no matter what. The next morning, Rihei attends the meeting. However, some nobles disapprove of Rihei and his squad joining the knights. The princess defends the Black Carriage Squad, stating that they have nothing to do with Elia's crime. Everyone welcomes them except for Zierro, who is consumed with rage and insists on causing trouble for Rihei and his comrades. Zierro persists in insulting Rihei, but Rihei responds in kind, further fueling Zierro's anger. The meeting continues, and the princess asks her vice commander, Demia, to share the latest updates. Demia informs them that a large number of monsters are approaching the Elven Forest. The princess asks Rihei for his opinion on the situation and what solution he suggests. Rihei responds that they should send scouts first to assess the situation thoroughly. However, at the same time, the knight divisions must be reorganized to defend the roads and villages surrounding the kingdom, otherwise they would only be defending themselves. The princess is impressed by Rihei's words, which angers Zierro even more. Zierro rushes to his father, the noble, and the other rigid noble elders to inform them about what is happening and about the Black Carriage Squad joining the knights. The arrogant nobles agree with Zierro that the black goblins should be expelled. However, they acknowledge that they still need them for now to eliminate the monsters. Zierro becomes even more frustrated, but the nobles assure him that once the monsters are gone, the Black Carriage Squad's role will end. At that point, they will expel them and eliminate them. Later, Tam and his teammate go to buy food for the squad. His teammate leaves briefly to get some drinks, so Tam continues alone, purchasing bread and other supplies. The baker hands him the bread for free, stating that the Black Carriage Squad are now the heroes of the city, saving the kingdom from the monsters. Tam is overjoyed that people now admire them. On his way back home, a group of gang members ambushes him with weapons. Tam prepares to fight back but remembers Rihei's instructions about avoiding trouble in the city. He decides to evade them instead. However, they attack him, severely injuring him. Just then, his teammate arrives, defeats them, and saves him. At that moment, a young woman rushes over, tending to Tam's wounds. His teammate then takes him home. At home, everyone checks on Tam. Rihei praises him for controlling his anger and handling the situation well. However, Rihei begins to suspect that Zierro was behind the attack. He holds back his frustration since he has no evidence. After Tam is taken to his room, the squad expresses their fury over the attack on him. Rihei goes to inform Moriham about what happened and shares his suspicions that Zierro was behind it. Moriham agrees, stating that Zierro is definitely responsible. However, since Zierro is a candidate to become the princess's fiancé, they cannot act recklessly without solid proof. The next day, Rihei goes to meet the princess. She asks about Tam and whether he is doing well. Rihei thanks her for her concern and assures her that Tam is fine. She apologizes for what has been happening in the city. At that moment, Zierro enters and tries to provoke Rihei further. Rihei ignores him and leaves, returning home. As soon as he arrives, he asks about Tam. His sister tells him that he is doing better and that Azel and Zoka are also taking care of him. At that moment, Rihei notices a strange-looking dagger in the house. He picks it up and asks where it came from. His sister tells him that it is the dagger the bandits used to attack Tam. Rihei is stunned when he sees the emblem of Zierro's family on it. He becomes furious and immediately rushes out, with his sister following him. At that moment, Rihei intercepts Zierro and his father's carriage. Zierro steps out, shouting in anger over the sudden stop. However, the moment he sees Rihei, he freezes in terror. He tries to run, but Rihei's sister grabs him. Rihei is about to finish him off when Zierro's father steps out and begs for his son's life, promising that this will never happen again. Rihei spares them and leaves. Upon returning home, Tam is happy that Rihei has avenged him. Castle and the friends continue on their way, but suddenly, a little girl appears in front of them. At that moment, Frey notices a look of despair and sadness in her eyes. The girl immediately runs away, and the friends realize that there must be a nearby village. They decide to rest there for the night. They arrive at the village and meet Hendel, the village mayor, who tells them that the building behind him used to be the village center but is now a shelter for children. Castle is surprised and asks why they turned it into a shelter. The mayor explains that monsters attacked the village some time ago, forcing everyone to flee to the shelter. The villagers are now gathering resources to rebuild their homes. Frey suggests that they help the villagers, so she goes inside and takes care of the children, making them very happy. However, she sees the sad girl again, sitting alone. Frey approaches her to talk, but the girl gets scared and runs away once more. Later, Frey learns that the girl's name is Elise and that she hasn't spoken or smiled since the monster attack. It is likely that her parents died in the attack. Frey keeps trying to reach Elise and cheer her up. She asks the friends to stay there for the night. The friends are surprised by her request, and Castle reminds her that the sooner they reach the Great Sword, the better. Frey insists on staying, so the friends agree and inform the mayor of their decision. She tells him that she wants to spend more time playing with the children. She teaches them how to make flower crowns, and Elise goes to pick some beautiful yellow flowers. But as soon as Frey gets close, Elise runs away again. Frey keeps trying to make Elise and the other children happy, but nothing seems to work. Eventually, Elise opens up to Frey and tells her that these yellow flowers were her mother's favorite. She also reveals that demons killed her mother. Frey hugs Elise, and the girl finally breaks down in tears. Frey spends time with her, helping her prepare delicious food, and Elise starts to smile and interact with the other children. The next morning, the friends prepare to leave. The villagers thank them for their help and bid them farewell. But before Frey leaves, Elise asks her to come with her. Without saying a word, she takes her to a small hut in the forest and locks her inside so that she won't leave. The friends grow worried when Frey takes too long to return. Castle goes to look for her and finds Elise in the forest. He asks her where Frey is, but Elise looks nervous. Eventually, she takes him to Frey, who is happy to see them. Suddenly, a giant monster emerges from underground, terrifying Elise. Castle prepares to fight and tells Elise to hide. He continues battling the creature while Frey watches anxiously from inside the hut. At that moment, Frey notices another monster lurking beneath the ground. She tries to warn Castle, but he doesn't hear her. She grabs a weapon, breaks the door open, and rushes to help them, protecting Elise. Castle quickly takes advantage of the situation and defeats the monsters. Frey, Castle, and Elise return to the shelter. The villagers learn what happened and celebrate their victory. The mayor thanks them sincerely and offers them food as a gift. Elise bids farewell to Frey, and the friends continue on their journey. On the way, they find a strange man standing alone. Castle approaches him to ask for directions, but he is shocked to discover that the man is a zombie. The zombie attacks, but Castle quickly eliminates him. Suddenly, a large number of zombies appear, so they quickly run towards a house, and Cleo burns all the zombies. When they reach the house, they find a man named Johan, who welcomes them inside. They thank him for his help, and Roy asks Castle about the situation and how long the zombies have been here. Johan responds that it has been this way since the monsters attacked the village. At that time, the monsters killed many villagers, but a large number managed to escape. However, some were unable to flee, including himself. He tells them that ever since then, everyone has been living in fear, locking themselves inside their homes. After a while, the monsters took the villagers with them and left the village. Later, the villagers who were supposed to be dead returned as zombies. Johan reveals that he is the only survivor left here. At that moment, Frey notices the same flowers that Elise's mother loved inside the house. She mentions Elise's name in front of Johan, causing him to jump in shock. He asks her, "You know my daughter? She's alive, isn't she?" Frey replies that Elise is safe in a shelter near the village. Johan feels relieved and happy to know that his daughter is safe. He asks about her well-being, and Frey tells him that she is fine but will be even better once she knows that her father is alive as well. They urge him to go see Elise immediately. However, Johan tells them that, unfortunately, he cannot go to her yet. Everyone is surprised and asks him why, but he refuses to answer. Johan then asks them why they came to the village. Castle responds that they are on their way to Mount Ogria. Johan tells them to stay here for the night, explaining that the situation outside is very dangerous right now and they should continue their journey in the morning. The friends agree and decide to stay, but they all feel that there is something strange about Johan. At night, Castle leaves the room to observe Johann. He follows him to a hidden area inside the house and is shocked to see that Johann has a zombie woman locked up. Johann talks to her about Elise, telling her that their daughter is alive and safe. He seems to be in a strange state of delirium. Castle returns to the friends and tells them what he saw. They all gather in the main hall and confront Johann about the woman inside. Johann tells them that she is his wife. They realize that Johann cannot bear to lose his wife, so he has kept her locked up, hoping to find a cure. Roy and the friends try to bring Johann back to reality, urging him to let go of his wife, who is already gone, and to focus on his daughter, who still needs him. Johann returns to his wife and tries once again to wake her, but it is useless. This time, she suddenly awakens, breaks free, and attacks him. At the same time, the rest of the zombies attack the house from outside. The friends rush out and fight the zombies, taking down as many as possible. Johann draws his sword and finally ends his wife's suffering. The scene shifts to the kingdom the next morning, where the townspeople welcome the Black Caravan team as they return once again after defeating the monsters. They treat them as the heroes of the town. As they walk through the streets, Tam remembers the girl who helped him. He rushes to the town's baker and asks about her. The baker directs him to her location, telling him that she works at the sweets shop. Meanwhile, Rhett enters and submits his report to the leadership. Klaus welcomes him and says he wants to thank him for saving his friends from the monsters the last time they met. Rhett recalls Frey and Castle but replies that he doesn't remember them and that he isn't interested. Elsewhere, the princess checks on her father, the king. She reassures him about the kingdom and tells him that the noble Moriham is helping them through the Black Caravan team, which is composed of the Black Demons. The king is surprised and asks her about Moriham's connection to the Black Demons, warning her that this does not bode well at all. Rhett later meets the princess as she leaves the king's chamber. She tells him that she wants to speak with him about an important matter and asks her deputy, Demia, to go ahead of her. Meanwhile, Tam wanders outside the shop where the girl who helped him works. He peers through the window, but at that moment, a group of kids catches him and drags him inside to meet the girl, Shella. Shella welcomes him warmly. Back with the princess, she speaks to Castle, telling him that she must always think about the people and their well-being. She explains that the kingdom ended up in this state because, when her father was in good health, he was always occupied with wars and rarely returned to the palace. As a result, the internal affairs of the kingdom were left in the hands of the nobles, which led the country and its people to their current terrible state. She tells him that from now on, she will rely on him to help her. Later, Tam waits for Shella to finish work and they finally meet. She asks him why he came to see her and he replies that he came to thank her. He returns the handkerchief she used to wrap his wound. They get to know each other and become friends. That evening, Tam returns home feeling happy about the time he spent with Shella. His friends ask where he has been all this time. He replies that he was just wandering around the city, hiding the truth about his time with Shella. Rhett notices that Tam looks very happy and suspects that something is unusual. The next day, Tam goes to meet Shella again, but this time, one of his friends follows him and discovers that he is seeing her. He waits for Tam to return home and then confronts him, scolding him for meeting a human girl, who is technically one of their enemies. Rhett arrives and tells Tam that what he did was reckless, but this time, he trusts him and believes that he will handle things correctly. Tam leaves them and walks away, thinking about everything that has happened. The next morning, he meets Shella again and gives her flowers as a gift. They talk for a while, and he tells her about his past, how the kingdom's knights wronged them, wiping out his entire people and his tribe unjustly. He vows to keep fighting until he makes this world free of sorrow and injustice. Then, he bids her farewell and leaves. Meanwhile, Rhett speaks with Moriham. Moriham tells him that they have made incredible progress and that Rhett's team has now become the city's heroes. Rhett responds that things will remain this way only until they finish off the monsters. But after that, the people will forget everything and all that they have done for the kingdom. That is why they must secure a high position within the kingdom before this entire situation comes to an end. And we return to Castle and his friends after they finally arrived at Mount Ogria to meet the leader of the ghouls, Ayatollah, who possesses the second seal of the Great Sword. Cleo is stunned by the breathtaking view of the Red Valley. At that moment, she sees the leader of the beasts who attacked Castle, standing alongside another commander in the Beast King's army. The commander laughs loudly, prompting the leader to ask why he is laughing. He tells her, "Can't you hear the cries of anger, sorrow, and the lamentations of humans?" She replies, "No." He then reveals that he has been waiting for this great moment for 100 years. At that moment, we learn that this commander is the sorcerer responsible for bringing the Beast King back into the world. We go back to the past and discover that this sorcerer was from the Republic of Grey. At that time, he supported the princess and the ailing king, who was on the brink of death. However, on the day the king died, the sorcerer used all the research he had studied for years and brought the king back to life as a zombie. Due to this horrific crime, he was completely exiled from the country. Returning to Castle and his friends, Cleo mentions a tale that says the valley turned red because of the immense bloodshed during the war, making the place truly terrifying. Roy responds that the place is indeed fitting for war-thirsty ghouls. At that moment, they hear a loud commotion in the valley. The friends rush to the source of the noise and find a fierce battle between two groups of ghouls. Roy notices that the ghouls are fighting against a group of zombie ghouls, shocking Frey. Castle quickly runs to help, and the rest of the friends join in, eliminating the zombies completely. The ghouls thank Castle and his friends for their help and ask for some time to speak with them before taking them to their leader, who sent them to await and guide them. The shaman introduces himself as Kaola, one of the leaders of the ghoul tribe, and his apprentice, Dale. Castle introduces himself and his friends. Kaola welcomes him, saying he has been expecting him for a long time and knew he would come through prophetic dreams. Castle explains that they have come to meet the leader of the ghouls to break the second seal of the Great Sword. Kaola is shocked by his words and asks, "So, you are the heir of the Great Sword?" Dale, furious, accuses Castle of deception, saying, "This is an old trick. You're just trying to exploit the death of the great Ayatollah to deceive us, aren't you?" Castle and his friends are stunned by the leader's death. Kaola informs them that the current leader is Chief Seeing. Castle and his friends grow anxious, unsure of how to break the seal now. Kaola reassures them that Chief Seeing must have been told a way to break the seal in Ayatollah's absence. Castle asks Kaola to take him to the leader, but Dale refuses, saying it is impossible because humans cooperate with beasts. The friends are bewildered by his words and ask him what he means. Kaola explains that a sorcerer came to the valley some time ago, and soon after, many ghouls disappeared and turned into zombies. The friends are shocked. Castle exclaims, "That's impossible. How could a human work with the beasts?" Cleo asks about the sorcerer's appearance, and Kaola describes him, but unfortunately, Cleo does not recognize him. Castle asks Kaola again to help him reach the leader. Kaola promises to take him there and vows to protect him with his life if necessary. He then leads Castle to meet Seeing, instructing the rest of the friends to stay behind to avoid any trouble. Kaola and Castle arrive at Chief Seeing's location. Kaola introduces Castle, saying he is the heir of the Great Sword and the only one capable of defeating the Beast King. Seeing responds that Castle must prove he is truly the heir, and the only way to do that is by defeating him in a duel. Since he is the heir, he must be extremely skilled in combat. Kaola intervenes quickly, arguing that this cannot happen because Castle is the hero and the future of the world, and he must survive. He declares that if anyone tries to defeat Castle, he will sacrifice his own life to protect him. Silence fills the place at that moment. Seeing, furious, declares, "Then you must die as well, Kaola." Castle immediately steps in, trying to convince Seeing with words, saying they must unite without sacrificing anyone, but his efforts are in vain. Seeing launches a devastating attack on Castle but stops at the last moment. He realizes that Castle is truly courageous and serves his cause, even if it costs him his life. Seeing then tells Castle that Ayatollah left an important message. If the heir arrives, they must take him immediately to the Great Shrine. We learn that this place is of great importance to the ghouls and serves as a test for Castle. Seeing tells him that if he is truly the heir, he will be able to pass this test. At that moment, Seeing receives a report that a group of humans has been captured on their land. We discover that they are Cleo and the friends. Seeing decides to imprison them until Castle completes the test. If he proves to be the heir, they will be released. If not, they will also be executed. He then orders Kaola to take Castle to the shrine. At that moment, we see Castle unconscious during the test, lying unconscious, with Frey and the friends beside him taking care of him. Frey writes a letter to Klaus, explaining everything that happened during their journey, how Castle has become incredibly strong, and that he is currently undergoing a very important test that will determine the fate of the world. Cleo also writes a letter to Dominix, but she exaggerates in it, claiming she has achieved unprecedented accomplishments. Meanwhile, Celine goes to Loren and informs her that she has eliminated the beasts that entered the forest. Loren thanks her for her hard work and tells her that the day of the Beast King's emergence is near, and when that time comes, beasts will spread across the entire world. Celine asks about Castle and his friends, and Loren tells her that he has surely passed Mount Ogria and is now on his way to meet Pavel. Celine grows worried about them and hopes they are safe. After that, we learn that Castle has also passed Seeing's test. chest, and seeing has broken the second seal on the sword as well. At that moment, the power of the great sword manifests even more. Castle and his friends decide to continue their journey and bid farewell to seeing Kaola and the rest of the ghouls. But suddenly, the evil sorcerer appears. Dale becomes furious, pointing at him and saying, "This is the human who handed the ghouls over to the beasts and turned them into zombies." The sorcerer laughs loudly and responds, "How dare you compare me to such weak creatures? I am the great sorcerer Malduk, the one who invented the idea of the undead and brought them back to life." Castle and his friends are shocked to realize that this is Malduk, the sorcerer who brought the Beast King into the world 100 years ago. Castle becomes enraged at that moment and insists on defeating the sorcerer. He attacks him with full force, but the sorcerer turns out to be astonishingly powerful, even stronger than Castle. The battle between them is fierce, and just as the sword's power activates, the sorcerer flees immediately. Since then, Castle has remained unconscious, which is why they are still staying with the ghoul tribe, waiting for Castle to regain his strength. Meanwhile, Klaus receives Frey's letter and feels relieved that they are safe. He is happy to know that Castle continues to progress and grows stronger as time passes. The scene shifts back to the kingdom, where Rhett has taken his entire team to the castle, just as the princess requested. The princess welcomes them, but they initially look down on her because she is a princess. However, they are shocked to learn that she is also the leader of the knights and will be fighting alongside them against the beasts. The princess informs them that they will all set out tomorrow towards the plains of Galioia and tells them that this mission is crucial as it will determine the fate of the entire world. Demia explains the details, stating that their destination is the ruins of the Republic of Grey in the plains of Galioia. She tells them they will take the path opposite Eldora Forest and enter the plains directly, heading toward the Republican Palace. She explains that this palace is where the Beast King first appeared 100 years ago. Demia and the princess notice that the goblins are not taking the mission seriously and lack discipline. The princess then asks one of them to join her in a warm-up session. The training begins, and Azal attacks the princess with all his strength, but she is far stronger than him. Everyone is astonished by her power, and Azal is ultimately defeated. The other goblins mock Azal, saying, "What happened to you? Have you gotten weak or what?" The princess then asks if anyone else wants to duel her. Everyone grows tense and remains silent. She tells them that she trusts them, so they must also trust her and the knights. Meanwhile, Nobleman Moriham gathers the other nobles to discuss an important matter concerning the Black Goblins. He tells them that the Black Goblins must be rewarded for their efforts if they return from the upcoming battle. The nobles reply that they have already rewarded them by allowing them to join the knights. However, Moriham insists that Rhett should be made a noble. The nobles are shocked and immediately refuse, but Moriham pressures them and asks Nobleman Shemet for his opinion. Knowing that Shemet owes Rhett for saving his son's life, he hesitantly agrees. The other nobles grow furious, saying that the Chancellor will never allow such nonsense. Moriham responds that, in that case, the Chancellor must be removed from his position. At that moment, the Chancellor is busy with the princess, trying to convince her not to go to the plains herself. However, she refuses and insists on taking responsibility herself. Meanwhile, Klaus visits the princess and tells her about his friend Castle and Frey, explaining how they are fighting the beasts and defeating them. He reassures her that many other nations are also battling the beasts. The princess becomes excited and tells him that she hopes to meet Castle one day. Klaus replies that Castle would be very happy about that. The scene then shifts to Rhett sitting with his team, revealing his plan with Nobleman Moriham. He tells them that he will finally become a noble after they return from battle, but they must achieve a stunning victory. He also explains that they will be able to rid themselves of the princesses and the Chancellor's authority through Moriham, who will seize control of the kingdom while they are away. The team becomes excited and immediately prepares for battle. The next morning, the princess bids farewell to Bihal, telling him that she is leaving everything in his hands. The people gather to watch the soldiers set out, waving them off until they reach the black carriage. Sela runs quickly to bid farewell to Tam as well, but he ignores her and continues on his way. Meanwhile, the sorcerer sits with Commander Maria, discussing their plans and what they will do if the great sword appears again. The scene then shifts to Riha, the black carriage, and the knights traveling toward the plains. They set up camp in the evening, and the princess gazes at the moon, realizing that the time for the Beast King's emergence is drawing near. Rhett gathers with his companions and tells them that they must win this battle on their own, without the knights. The goblins become extremely excited about the fight, hoping to battle strong beasts to enjoy themselves. The next morning, everyone prepares, and Demia tells Rhett that he will advance in this direction to reach the palace. She instructs him and his comrades to report immediately if they spot any beasts in the area. The princess warns him to be cautious. Rhett and his team proceed, finding the place eerie and extremely dangerous, but they press on. At that moment, Tam notices a strange mark on the ground. As soon as he touches it, it explodes, killing him instantly. The others are stunned and deeply grieve for their fallen comrade. Rhett calms them down, telling them they must pull themselves together. He assures them that this is the work of the beasts and says that the creature responsible for Tam's death must be nearby. At that moment, the sorcerer suddenly appears behind them from a black magical portal. At that moment, the princess and Demia stand waiting for any news from Rhett and his team. Demia asks the princess to rest and let someone else take over the watch, but the princess refuses, saying that she has a bad feeling and wants to monitor the situation herself. The scene shifts to Maria, the commander of the Beast King's army. She senses the sorcerer's power and realizes that he is doing something strange at that moment. Back with Rhett and his companions, the sorcerer is surprised to see black goblins in the area. Rhett becomes furious and asks him if he was the one who set the trap. The sorcerer replies, "Don't you know that this area belongs to the Beast Army?" The other goblins grow enraged at the sorcerer, but they are suddenly shocked when their friend Tam stands up again, only to find that he has turned into a zombie. Azal, unaware of the situation, happily approaches Tam, only for Tam to attack and kill him. The sorcerer then commands Tam to attack his former comrades. The battle continues, and they manage to eliminate Tam's corpse first. The sorcerer then strikes them with astonishing magical power, killing a large number of them with ease. Enraged, the remaining goblins charge at the sorcerer, but he effortlessly eliminates them as well. Rhett is left in shock at the sight before him. The sorcerer, with cold indifference, tells him, "Unfortunately, I can't create puppets from these corpses. They have been too badly damaged." Rhett's remaining team members attack the sorcerer with all their might, and in the end, Rhett's sister succeeds in stabbing him deeply. The sorcerer, now enraged, strikes Rhett's sister and sends her flying. At that moment, Maria arrives and asks, "What's going on? You seem to be having a rough time, aren't you?" The sorcerer, furious, snaps at her, "Shut up." Rhett is horrified to see his sister, Rebini, lying on the ground, badly injured and unconscious. Consumed by rage, he charges at the sorcerer with all his strength, landing a devastating blow. However, Maria intervenes and defeats Rhett using her magic. Maria then notices that the princess's army is approaching. She orders the sorcerer to withdraw immediately, saying she won't allow them to kill him because he still has a role to play in bringing the Beast King back to the world. The sorcerer casts his magic and vanishes instantly. At that moment, the princess arrives at the battlefield and is horrified by the gruesome scene, realizing that all the goblins have perished. As they search for any survivors, they find that Rhett is still alive and quickly aid him. The scene shifts to Castle in his dream, where he sees a strange figure before him. He stares intently at it, but at that moment, Frey calls out to him until he awakens. Castle is disoriented, unsure of where they are. As soon as he wakes up, all his friends rush to him, asking how he is. Cleo tells him they were very worried about him. Castle apologizes for making them worry. Kaola then orders Dale to inform everyone that Castle has awakened. Castle tells Frey that he will go for a short walk but won't go far, so she shouldn't worry. Castle walks to the site of his battle with the sorcerer, only to find Kaola behind him. Kaola asks if something is bothering him. Castle apologizes for the death of Chief Seeing. Kaola replies that it was Seeing's fate and that he fought bravely to his last breath in defense of the ghouls, which is what truly matters to them. Kaola reassures Castle that he will take care of everything and that they are grateful to him as well. He tells Castle that he is always ready to help him. Castle then asks Kaola for advice on how to control his overwhelming power without harming those around him. Kaola responds with advice as a ghoul, saying that Castle must strengthen his heart just as much as his physical strength in order to control the power of the great sword. Castle is puzzled and asks what he means. Kaola responds, "Didn't you say that you want to become a shield that protects your friends and those dear to you from all evil? Then devote yourself to that idea. Always keep in mind that you wield this weapon to protect others." That evening, Roy and Cleo visit the food storage, where the ghouls provide them with plenty of food for Castle since he is the hero. Cleo and Roy carry the food, and Cleo remarks that Castle surely won't be able to eat all of it. She is happy to see Castle back to normal and doing well again. She tells him that he looked terrifying during his battle with the sorcerer. Roy replies that there is still a third seal to break, which will unlock the full power of the sword, and when that happens, Castle will become much stronger. This thought unsettles Cleo, leaving her uncertain about what might happen. Roy reassures her, saying they must support Castle until the very end of their lives. That night, as everyone sleeps, Castle remains awake, thinking about his battle with the sorcerer and the incredible power he failed to control. He goes for a walk and returns to the battlefield, lost in thought. Frey comes to check on him, and Castle apologizes for worrying her. She tells him she couldn't sleep either, which is why she followed him. As they gaze at the moon, Castle tells her that they don't have time to waste. They must leave tomorrow now that he has recovered. He tells her that they must meet Pavel as soon as possible to break the third seal on the sword. Frey remains worried about him. Castle reassures her that he is fine, but the real problem is that he can't remember anything that happened before his rage took over. He tells her that he will try harder to control himself. Frey comforts him, saying that he is stubborn and she is sure he will overcome anything he faces. The next morning, everyone wakes up, and Castle and his friends bid farewell to Kaola and Dale. Dale apologizes for his previous rude behavior toward them and offers to accompany them to the mountain's base as a gesture of gratitude. Kaola then calls out to Frey, saying there is something important she must know. He tells her that in his vision, when Castle faced the Beast King, he vanished at the end, just like King Kyle did. Frey is stunned by this revelation. Kaola tells her that this is not set in stone and that they can prevent it if they work hard to change it. He asks her to take care of Castle. On their way to the next village, the friends take a break by the river. At that moment, a girl appears and mistakes Frey for someone else. Realizing her mistake, she apologizes and then introduces herself to the rest of the group, revealing that she is a mercenary named Reyna. Roy recognizes her, and we learn that she is an assassin who works solely for money. Roy then leads the group to continue their journey, but Reyna stops them. Roy tells her, "Don't follow us. We don't have time to waste with you." Reyna replies that they are heading in the same direction, so, unfortunately for him, he'll have to deal with her. She then asks if they plan to stay in the village for the night, and Cleo excitedly replies that it would be great. Reyna then says, "But first, I have something to ask you. You're not from Orphelia, are you?" Frey responds, "No, we are from Orphelia." Reyna then warns them not to let anyone in the village know they are from Orphelia or from the Empire. Castle, confused, asks her why, but she tells him to just listen to her, and she will explain the situation later. Reyna leads them into the village, which turns out to be a settlement of black goblins. She is well liked there and takes them to the inn where she is staying. However, there are no available rooms for them. She then asks the innkeeper to let them stay in her room. Meanwhile, the villagers are discussing the disappearance of 15 people. They don't know what happened to them, but they are certain that it wasn't the work of beasts, otherwise, there would have been bodies left behind. They speculate about who could be responsible and eventually conclude that it might be the people of Orphelia. They start criticizing Orphelians, calling them heartless and cruel. However, the innkeeper argues that it couldn't be them since humans have also gone missing this time. Reyna then takes Castle and the others to her room and explains what has been happening in the village. The disappearances have been increasing, but no one understands what's happening or who is behind it. From the perspective of the Black Goblins, the people of Orphelia are nothing more than tyrants. She warns them never to mention their homeland while they are here. At that moment, news arrives that Aiden has also been kidnapped. The villagers grow anxious, and Reyna and the friends head into the forest to search for him. Despite their efforts, they find nothing. Castle decides that they must help the village, but Roy refuses, insisting that they should avoid trouble and focus on their goal. However, Castle is determined, and eventually, everyone agrees to help. They ask Reyna if she has any clues or information that might help in the search. Unfortunately, she has nothing, but she had intended to investigate the forest near the village more thoroughly. However, it was too vast for her to search alone. The friends decide to search the forest together again. They set out and search every part of the forest. At that moment, Castle hears a strange sound and follows it, accidentally falling with Reyna into an underground tunnel. They decide to continue exploring the tunnel but stop momentarily to let their eyes adjust to the darkness. Reyna then asks Castle about his journey's destination. He tells her that he is going to meet Pavel at the Snowy Wind Mountain. She then asks him why he wants to meet Pavel. He replies that it is to break the third seal of the Great Sword. Reyna is shocked and asks, "Do you mean King Kyle's sword?" She becomes even more bewildered and asks why he is searching for it and wants to break the seal. Castle tells her that he is the heir of the Great Sword. Reyna, completely confused, says she doesn't understand what he is talking about, but what matters is that he must be a very important person. Meanwhile, Cleo continues searching the forest when she suddenly gets caught in a massive spider web while flying on her broomstick. She doesn't understand what is happening, but then the beast appears and captures her as well. Back in the tunnel, Reina finds Aiden's shoe on the ground. They are shocked and decide to venture deeper into the tunnel. They continue until they reach the monster's nest, which is filled with people trapped inside cocoons. Just as they decide to report their findings, the giant spider beast appears before them, with Cleo among its captives. Castle, enraged, immediately charges at the spider, but it retaliates and pushes him away. He continues to evade the spider's venomous attacks while fighting alongside Reina with all his might. However, the beast attacks Reina as well and captures her. Castle, now even more furious, decides to face it head-on. He channels all the power of the sword he possesses and unleashes a powerful and astonishing attack, eliminating the spider beast. With that, they rescue everyone and return safely to the village. The villagers rejoice at the return of their loved ones. Castle and his friends bid farewell to Reina and leave the village, continuing their journey to meet Pavel and break the final seal. At that moment, the princess, Demia, and the army arrive at the village where Castle and his friends previously passed by the shelter. They rest there for a while, and the princess thanks the mayor for their help and for providing a suitable place to treat Rhett. The mayor replies that it is only natural and an honor for them to assist the princess, adding that they are indebted to the people of Orphelia regardless. The princess and Demia are surprised, so the mayor explains that 2 days ago, a traveler from Orphelia saved them from the beasts, and his friends also took good care of the children while they stayed in the village. The princess is even more surprised, so the mayor tells her that the traveler's name was Sir Castle. She and Demia immediately recognize the name, recalling that Castle is Klaus's younger companion. The princess and Demia remain worried about Rhett, who has still not woken up. The princess says that things will be difficult the moment he regains consciousness and learns about the massacre his team suffered. The next morning, the young girls, along with Elise, run up to the princess and excitedly welcome her, presenting her with beautiful flowers. The princess gratefully accepts them, feeling overjoyed, and thanks them for the flowers. At that moment, Johann arrives and asks the children to go play elsewhere and not disturb the princess. The children bid her farewell and run off immediately. Meanwhile, a report reaches the nobles in the kingdom about the appearance of a very powerful beast in the plains, which, unfortunately, completely wiped out the black carriage unit. The nobles are shocked by the news, and Noble Moriham falls into a state of anger and disbelief, realizing that his entire plan has gone to waste. One of the knights informs Klaus about what happened and tells him that Rhett is the only survivor from the black carriage unit. He also explains that this news has spread fear and panic among the people of the kingdom. Indeed, the entire town is in a state of terror. Sheila is devastated when she hears what happened and weeps bitterly over Tam's loss. Back with the princess, she remains with the doctor as he treats Rhett. There is nothing left for them to do but wait for him to wake up. At that moment, Rhett slowly regains consciousness and asks where he is and where his comrades are. The princess becomes tense, unsure of what to say. She asks everyone to leave the room so she can speak with Rhett alone. She tells him that when they arrived, everyone was lying lifeless on the ground, and the beasts had disappeared. She then informs him that he is the sole survivor of his unit and apologizes for what happened. Rhett is utterly shocked and asks the princess to leave him alone for a while. Rhett falls into a state of deep shock, sorrow, and anger. Later, when the doctor enters the room, he finds that Rhett has vanished completely. The princess becomes extremely worried, not knowing where he has gone. She immediately orders everyone to search for him in the area, reasoning that since he is still injured, he couldn't have gone far yet. They search everywhere, but unfortunately, they do not find him. Meanwhile, Rhett struggles against his injuries, walking through the forest until he collapses to the ground. In that moment, he remembers everything that happened to his friends and sister. He screams in anger, unable to understand why he alone survived while everyone else perished. As he sits there, lost in thought, he remembers the sorcerer who killed them all and swears to kill him with his own hands. At that moment, the princess finds him, deeply worried about him. She tells him, "You're a fool. If you go to the plains in your current state, you will definitely die, and then you won't be able to avenge your friends." At that moment, Rhett's anger rises, and he reveals their plan, saying that everything they did was to take revenge on the people of Orphelia for what they did to the black goblins. The princess is shocked and tells him that something must be wrong. Rhett then tells her about the immense suffering the black goblins endured at the hands of the Orphelians. The princess is left in disbelief, shocked by both their plan and his words. However, Rhett tells her that none of that matters anymore. What matters now is that he will find the beast that killed his friends and kill it himself. At that moment, Rhett collapses again and loses consciousness. The princess takes him back to the village to treat him once more but does not tell Demia or anyone else what he revealed to her. Demia notices the sadness on the princess's face and asks her what happened, but the princess says nothing. She simply states that she had been blind to everything happening in the country for so long. Demia is confused by her words and asks about her conversation with Rhett. However, the princess replies that it has nothing to do with Rhett and that it's just her own thoughts. Demia tries to comfort her, but the princess walks away, saying she needs to get some fresh air outside. That night, Rhett wakes up again and heads toward the plains. In the forest, he encounters Maria. She tells him, "I didn't expect you to wake up again." Rhett, enraged, draws his sword and attempts to fight her, but he is still injured and she easily defeats him. Rhett then asks her why he is still alive. What is the purpose of his survival? Maria then asks him about the pendant he is wearing, wanting to know where he got it. Rhett is confused by the question and asks, "Why should I answer you?" Maria tells him that he clearly does not understand the value of the pendant he carries. She then reveals that pendant belonged to Ilya. Rhett is stunned. Maria continues, "You must know the story since you're a black goblin, right? The story of Ilya and her condemnation for defiling the great sword." She explains that 100 years after Ilya's death, her pendant was returned to her family. "And since you have it, that must mean you are her descendant, right?" Rhett is shocked by her words and asks, "What is your connection to Ilya?" Maria replies that Ilya was a dear friend of hers and that she was a woman who loved doing good. Maria then stuns him further by revealing that the Orphelians wronged Ilya as well and that the entire story they were told was a lie. Ilya was helping Kyle, not trying to defile the sword. Rhett is shaken by this revelation. Maria then tells him to go to the Sage's Tower, as Ilya's laboratory was there. Before leaving, she informs him that the fake great sword is there as well. Rhett then asks her why she is telling him all this. Maria replies that it is because she is trying to reclaim something precious to her. At that moment, we return to Castle and his friends as they continue their journey to meet Pavel. Cleo is extremely excited because only one seal remains before they can fully unleash the power of the great sword. Frey wonders what kind of person Pavel is. Cleo responds that he was a hero who fought alongside King Kyle 100 years ago, making her even more eager to meet him. At that moment, Roy notices a zombie watching them from a distance. It suddenly attacks, and he swiftly eliminates the creature. However, Castle notices something strange about Roy and asks him if he's alright. Roy insists that everything is fine. Later that night, Castle approaches Roy again and asks him what's bothering him. Roy replies that he just remembered something from his past. Castle expresses interest in hearing about his past, so Roy begins to tell him his story. He reveals that he was once a member of a group of mercenary assassins. He recounts the day he met Zaid, the leader of the assassins, who gave him food when he was starving on the streets. Determined to repay Zaid for his kindness, Roy insists on doing something in return. Zaid then suggests that Roy join their group. Roy agrees, and after joining, Zaid begins training him. However, every day, Roy also assists Zaid with manual labor, such as driving stakes into the ground and helping people with ordinary tasks. It turns out that this group leans more toward helping others than actual killing. Castle then asks Roy if the zombie he killed earlier was Zaid. Roy replies that it wasn't. It was another member of the group named Bavian. He then recounts what happened that caused them all to be separated. One day, the kingdom assigned them a difficult mission to investigate the plains. Since no human had entered that place for over 100 years, the situation was dangerous. Many had ventured in before, but no one ever returned alive. On that day, they sent one of their members to scout the area while the rest of the team waited. However, he never returned. Zaid then decided to go search for him, but he, too, did not return for a long time. Growing increasingly worried, the rest of the team decided to search for their leader, fearing that something had happened to him. Determined to find Zaid and their missing comrade, they set out, searching every corner of the eerie and terrifying place. Eventually, they found their leader and ran toward him in relief. Zaid, surprised to see them, asked what they were doing there. They told him they were worried about him, which is why they had come to search. They then continued searching together for their missing comrade, Eddie. As they wandered through the area, Zaid and another member of the group stepped on a strange marking on the ground. In an instant, they transformed into zombies and attacked the rest of the team, slaughtering them all. Roy barely managed to escape, fleeing while hearing the agonizing screams of his friends. Eventually, he collapsed from exhaustion. When he woke up, he found himself in the Sage's Tower, with Dominix watching over him. Dominix asked Roy what had happened, and Roy explained everything. Dominix then clarified what had truly occurred, that his comrades had become zombies, nothing more than soulless, mindless corpses acting on instinct. Since that day, Roy lived in the Sage's Tower, waiting for the moment when he could return to the plains with Castle. After finishing his story, Roy leaves Castle and goes to sleep. The next morning, everyone wakes up, and Castle informs his friends about the presence of the undead in the area. The group then begins planning a way to eliminate all the zombies at once. Cleo suggests a method to lure all the undead together, telling them that they can attract them by creating a very loud noise. Frey, puzzled, asks how that would work. Cleo confidently replies that it's simple. She can create an explosion using her fire magic. They soon confirm that no other creatures are in the area, so they continue moving forward. Roy then speaks to Castle, revealing that there is another reason he joined this journey aside from his deal with Dominic's. He wants to find his leader and put him to rest himself. At that moment, Roy and the group suddenly halt. In front of them stands Zaid, now a zombie. Everyone prepares for battle, and Roy charges at Zaid with all his strength. However, it becomes clear that Zaid is extremely powerful. At that moment, the rest of the group's zombified members appear. Castle takes care of them, leaving Zaid to Roy. The battle between Roy and Zaid is fierce. In the end, Roy succeeds in defeating Zaid, finally allowing him to rest in peace. Castle and his friends finally arrive at their destination, marveling at the sight of the majestic mountain. Castle looks up at the sky and realizes that the time for the Beast King's emergence is drawing near. Because of this, he must make sure Pavel breaks the seal quickly so that he will be ready to face the Beast King. They set out in search of Pavel, the greatest sorcerer in history. They know that Pavel lives in an icy cave, as Loren had told them. They search everywhere, but suddenly, a giant skeletal monster appears and attacks them with immense force. The friends quickly evade the attack, but the monster is incredibly powerful, and they struggle against it. However, in the end, they manage to defeat it. After resting for a while, they decide to continue their journey. Suddenly, strong winds begin to blow against them, but they push forward. Over time, the weather conditions improve, and they come across a wooden cabin halfway along the path. They discuss whether they should rest there for a while or continue. Since they all seem fine, they decide to keep going. However, at that moment, Frey collapses. The group decides to take a break until she recovers. While resting in the cabin, Cleo notices the reason for Frey's exhaustion and begins to cry. Roy and Castle enter, and Castle asks Frey if she is alright now. She replies that everything is fine. Cleo hides her sadness and gets up to prepare water for Frey without telling Castle or Roy anything. The scene shifts to the princess and Demia. Demia asks the princess when they should move out. The princess replies that they will not move until Rhett returns with the fake sword from the sage's tower. They need it to defend themselves if the Beast King appears or if the powerful beast that destroyed the Black Carriage unit shows up again. Meanwhile, Castle stands outside, watching the sky. Frey joins him and tells him that the cold air feels refreshing. She notices that Castle looks tense, as if something is troubling him. She asks if he had a nightmare while sleeping. Castle tells her that he has been seeing the same dream repeatedly. A mysterious figure calls out to him in his sleep, but he can never tell who it is or whether they are a friend or foe. He explains that this dream started appearing ever since he gained power from the second seal in Mount Ogria. At that moment, Frey recalls Kaola's words about Castle disappearing after defeating the Beast King just as King Kyle did. Frey gently reassures Castle that everything will be fine. She laughs and jokes with him, lightening his mood. They enjoy a moment together until Frey grows exhausted again. Castle carries her back inside. They promise each other that, once the war is over, they will return to the kingdom together. Later that night, Castle leaves a letter for them while they sleep and sets off alone. However, Roy catches up to him and asks where he is going by himself. He also questions the letter Castle left behind. Castle tells him that he has decided to complete the mission alone. Roy is shocked and furious at Castle's words, accusing him of wanting them to leave him behind and take Frey back to the kingdom. Castle replies, yes. Frey always pushes herself too hard for the sake of others. Roy yells at him, calling him an arrogant fool. He says, do you really think you can accomplish everything alone? Do you realize that if you die, Frey will be heartbroken for the rest of her life? She will blame herself for not being able to protect you. He then asks Castle if he truly wants to make them feel powerless and unable to help him. At that moment, Cleo joins in, scolding Castle. She tells him that they are all in good health thanks to Frey. The truth about Frey's exhaustion is finally revealed. She had been using her magic the entire way to resist the strong winds and clear the path for them. That was why she had drained all of her magical energy. Castle finally understands and reconsiders his decision. He decides to continue moving forward together with his friends, as they always have. The next morning, the princess bids farewell to Elise, who gives her sweets that Frey had taught her how to make. The princess promises that peace will soon come to the world. As they prepare to leave the town, Rhett approaches the princess and asks how he can get to the sage's tower. The princess asks him why he wants to go there, but Rhett tells her it's none of her concern and just asks for an answer. The princess tells him she will give him the information, but only if he tells her what he plans to do. Rhett then explains everything he knows about the fake sword, and together they set off toward the sage's tower. We return to Castle and his friends, finding Castle facing Pavel. However, something feels strange. Pavel suddenly attacks Castle with his full magical power. Castle tries to resist, but to no avail. Meanwhile, Frey, Cleo, and Roy struggle to break through the ice barrier separating them from Castle. Cleo continuously strikes the ice with powerful magical attacks until she finally manages to pierce through and reach Castle. At that moment, Pavel dispels the magic and removes the enchantment from the area. He then tells them that they have passed the test. It is then revealed that everything was a test to evaluate Castle's friends and determine whether they were truly worthy of accompanying him. Pavel then sits down with Castle and tells him that he wants to share something about his mother, Arlette. Castle is shocked and asks if his mother was ever there. Pavel replies, "Yes, she was here 100 years ago. I was the one responsible for protecting her while she slept." Pavel then begins telling the story from the beginning, recounting what happened 100 years ago when King Kyle came to him and Loren, requesting their aid in defeating the Beast King. However, Pavel refused the offer at first and attacked them with his magic. Kyle withstood the attack and kept insisting until Pavel was finally convinced to join them. It is revealed that Pavel only agreed to join them after a long time, once he finally opened his heart to Kyle. One day, while Kyle and Loren were near Pavel's cave, a beast attacked them. Pavel appeared at that moment and eliminated the beast instantly. From that moment on, they became close friends and continued fighting together against the Beast King's army. One day, Kyle visited Pavel and asked him to protect Arlette and Castle if something were to happen to him during the battle against the Beast King. Pavel was shocked and told him, "Don't tell me you're planning to die, right? You must take care of yourself and return safely from the battle." Kyle reassured him, saying that he would never give up until he saved the entire world. That was the last conversation between Kyle and Pavel. After the war, all they found on the battlefield was the great sword. Both Kyle and the Beast King had vanished completely. Castle then asks Pavel where Kyle could have gone. Pavel replies that he does not know. He explains that they were deeply worried about Kyle, but they had to seal the sword first to ensure they could face the Beast King again if he ever returned. Since the sword needed its wielder to be present for it to be of any use, they had no choice. Several days later, Dominix came up with the idea of freezing Arlette and Castle in deep stasis for another 100 years in case the Beast King reappeared. Loren opposed the idea, but Dominix convinced everyone that this was the only way to save the world from future danger. Eventually, everyone agreed, except for Loren. They then presented the idea to Arlette. She was stunned upon learning what had happened to Kyle and that he might never return. She was also informed that Maria, who had been with Kyle, was missing as well. It is revealed at that moment that Maria was not the commander of the Beast King's army. In fact, she had been one of Kyle's closest allies. Arlette ultimately agreed to Dominix's plan after confirming that it would not harm Castle and that it was necessary to save the world. Loren tried to persuade her to reconsider, but Arlette decided to sacrifice herself for everyone's sake, just like Kyle did. She then requested that they support Castle the same way they supported Kyle. From that moment on, Pavel took on the duty of protecting Arlette and Castle throughout the past century. Pavel is surprised when Castle calmly accepts everything he has heard. Castle declares that he is ready to sacrifice himself for everyone, just as his parents did. At that moment, Pavel smiles, and thinks to himself that Kyle's son truly resembles him. Then, Pavel suddenly informs them that, unfortunately, the Beast King is set to appear today. His time has finally come. The friends are shocked. Castle immediately asks Pavel to break the final seal on the sword so that he can obtain its full power. Pavel prepares himself and tells them that they must go to the World Tree as soon as possible to retrieve the sword, revealing that this is where they had hidden it. The group rushes to obtain the sword, filled with trust and hope in Castle. As they prepare for battle, they await the appearance of the Beast King, marking the beginning of the final battle. At that moment, the evil sorcerer completes his magical circle and summons the Dark King. However, the shocking twist occurs. King Kyle appears instead. Everyone is stunned, and Maria, overjoyed, rushes toward him. But suddenly, a strange, sinister aura surrounds Kyle, and he dons the armor of the Dark King. The sorcerer kneels before the Dark King and greets him. Maria, confused, asks what is happening. The sorcerer tells her that Kyle is now the Dark King, the destroyer of the world. Meanwhile, Castle and his friends, along with Pavel, are on their way to the World Tree, excited to break the final seal. At the same time, the princess and Rhett travel toward the sage's tower. They finally arrive and enter to meet Dominix. Dominix welcomes them, remarking to the princess that the last time he saw her, she was just a small child. The princess then introduces Rhett to him. She then asks how they can defeat the Dark King. Dominix tells her that the Dark King has already returned to their world and that he can feel his energy now. Dominix then asks Rhett why he has come as well. Rhett replies that he came because he wants to see Ilya's laboratory. Dominix asks him why. In response, Rhett shows him the pendant. Seeing this, Dominix asks them to sit down as he explains the full story. He then takes them to Ilya's laboratory, telling Rhett that everything has remained untouched since the last time Ilya was there. He then leaves Rhett in the lab and returns to the princess. Dominix then asks, "You want to know how to defeat the Beast King, correct?" He tells her that the only way to defeat the Beast King is with the great sword, Aya. That is the only method. The princess becomes tense and tells him that, unfortunately, the great sword is missing. Dominix responds that they sealed the sword away in a secret location all this time. The princess is surprised and asks, "So it still exists?" Dominix confirms this. She then asks where it is. He reveals that the sword is hidden at the World Tree. The princess, shocked, asks, "Why didn't you tell us this before?" Dominix replies that he had to keep the existence of the great sword and its heir hidden to protect them for this very moment. The princess, even more confused, asks, "Who is its heir?" Dominix explains that the sword can only be wielded by those chosen by the great Lua. There is only one person capable of inheriting that power, a young man named Castle. He then tells her that Castle is King Kyle's son and recounts the story of Kyle and Arlette, explaining how they placed Castle into deep stasis alongside his mother for a century in preparation for this moment. He also tells her about Ilya, Kyle's half-sister. Meanwhile, Rhett searches all over the laboratory for the sword but finds nothing. In the end, he discovers Ilya's journal, where she recorded everything about her life and research. After reading the entries, Rhett finally understands the full truth. Back with Dominix, he continues speaking to the princess about Ilya, telling her that she was only trying to protect her brother. However, a group of nobles framed her to eliminate her and her family since they were the closest to the throne by royal bloodline. He explains that everything was a fabrication from the very beginning. At that moment, Rhett bursts into the room, filled with anger. He accuses Dominix, saying, "There was never a fake sword to begin with. You knew this all along, didn't you?" Dominix replies that he had no idea because he was with King Kyle on his journey to defeat the Beast King. After returning, he tried to convince people of Ilya's innocence, but by then, it was too late. The decision had already been made, and even the Black Goblins were consumed with hatred toward Ilya. Later, Rhett sits alone, deep in thought about everything that has happened. The princess then approaches him and asks what he plans to do next. She invites him to join their knights in the fight against the Beast King. She tells him that there is still hope for defeating the Beast King because the heir of King Kyle exists, the wielder of the great sword, Aya. Rhett is stunned by this revelation and asks her where the great sword is. The next morning, monsters spread across the entire land, and everyone fights with all their might to defend their homeland. Meanwhile, the sorcerer sits with the Beast King, telling him that they must destroy the great sword first. If they succeed, no one will be able to stand against the magnificent Dark King. Castle and his friends continue their journey toward the World Tree, traveling through the fairy forest. At the same time, Loren and Celine battle fiercely against the monsters. They are both deeply concerned about Castle and his companions. Loren tells Celine that they must prepare for the fierce battle ahead. Back with Castle and his friends, they decide to rest from their journey and begin searching for food and water. Cleo sits with Pavel and starts asking him several questions about how he became such an incredible sorcerer. Meanwhile, Castle is collecting water with Frey when a massive flying monster appears. Castle remembers Pavel's warning that he is forbidden from using the sword's power until they reach the World Tree. He grabs Frey, and they flee quickly, hiding in a cave between the rocks. Roy arrives to help them, but at that moment, another monster appears and swallows Castle whole. Unfortunately, Castle is forced to use the power of the sword, slicing the monster in half. The Beast King senses the sword's power, as does the sorcerer. Using his magic, the sorcerer teleports to Castle and his friend's location. Castle and the others prepare for battle, and in that moment, Castle lays eyes on the Dark King. The sorcerer introduces them to the Dark King, telling them that they should submit to him and accept becoming his servants. If they do, he will grant them mercy and allow them to live. However, the group immediately refuses, declaring that they would rather die than serve him. The sorcerer then unleashes his magic, attacking them with full force. Pavel steps forward and blocks the sorcerer's attack with ease. However, the Dark King suddenly moves and launches a devastating attack himself. Pavel intercepts the attack, shielding the others, but as a result, everyone falls into the canyon below. Maria jumps after them, following them down. The sorcerer himself is even shocked by the incredible power of the Dark King. At that moment, Loren senses the Dark King's power as well, and she is filled with terror. The scene shifts back to Castle and his friends, where Maria rescues them. Castle asks her why she saved them, but she does not respond. Instead, she simply tells them that Pavel needs care before leaving them. Pavel remains unconscious, so Frey uses her healing magic on him. At that moment, a forest spirit appears and guides them to Loren and Celine. Loren is shocked when she sees Pavel badly injured. They take him for medical care. Castle explains to Celine what happened, telling her that the Dark King has returned. He apologizes for failing to stop him. Celine reassures him, saying she knows he did everything he could and acknowledges that their journey must have been difficult. The friends then ask about the condition of the forest. Celine tells them that everything is fine for now, but unfortunately, the situation continues to worsen over time. Loren then approaches Castle, telling him that Pavel has yet to regain consciousness. This means that the attack he endured, despite being such a powerful sorcerer, proves just how overwhelmingly strong the enemy is. Castle agrees, and Roy adds that everything happened from just a single attack by the Beast King. Loren tells Castle and the others to rest, assuring them that she will take care of Pavel. She also informs them that she will use her magic to hide their presence in the forest from the Beast King. Later, Castle and Frey visit Chibi's grave to pay their respects. Maria appears before them once again. Castle asks her about her last words to him. What did she mean when she said that the great sword was nothing more than a curse from Lua? Maria replies that the situation is exactly as she described it. At that moment, Celine spots her and draws her bow. However, Loren arrives as well and orders Celine to lower her weapon. Loren then welcomes Maria. Maria responds, "Why do you have such a sad look on your face, Loren? Shouldn't we be celebrating? After all, we're finally reunited after 100 years. Loren replies, "Celebrate? You were once one of the great priestesses, and now you've become a monster." Castle and Frey are shocked by what they hear. Maria tells them that she simply chose to follow the great Lia instead of Lua, that is all. Loren sighs and tells her, "Unfortunately, since you have become a monster, I must put an end to you now. I do not wish to kill an old friend." Loren then reveals to Castle and Frey that Maria was once their companion, along with King Kyle. The group is stunned by this revelation. Maria looks at Castle and tells him that he looks exactly like Kyle. Loren then asks her what really happened in the final battle, demanding that they continue their discussion inside. It is revealed that Maria was Kyle's childhood friend and that she was a priestess like Frey. The story shifts back in time to when Kyle and Ilya trained together as usual. Maria watched over them and healed their wounds whenever they got injured. She often scolded Kyle for not learning the proper techniques in swordsmanship, warning him that he was getting hurt too often. Kyle and Ilya would apologize, always troubling her with their recklessness. Maria followed Kyle everywhere. Even when he snuck into town, she would always go with him. She promised to stay by his side and help him, even if he traveled to the ends of the world. One day, Kyle and Maria went to the town as usual. On their way, they grew hungry and decided to buy some bread. Unfortunately, the bakery had already sold out, and the last loaf had been reserved for Arlette. This was the first time Kyle met Arlette. Arlette argued with Kyle when he tried to take her bread. Kyle asked Maria who she was, and Arlette replied that she was a regular customer at the bakery. She explained that the bread had been specially prepared for someone important. Kyle was puzzled by her words and decided to wait and see who this important person was. At that moment, a young black goblin boy arrived and asked the baker for a loaf of bread. The baker handed him the reserved loaf, and the boy gratefully took it, looking overjoyed. Arlette then told Kyle that the boy worked carrying bricks every day. Kyle was surprised. Arlette explained that her family had a contract with the workshop where the boy's father worked. Unfortunately, his father had suffered a severe injury, so the boy had taken his place. Every day, he went to work with a loaf of bread in his hands. Kyle came to understand the boy's situation and decided that he would look after him from then on. Arlette then asked him, "If you can care for this boy, can you care for all the others like him? There are so many more in the same situation, and some even worse." Kyle admitted that he might not be able to do that now, but he hoped that one day he would be able to. Arlette smiled and said, "You will, one day, Your Highness." Kyle was shocked that she had known his true identity all along. Arlette then introduced herself, bid him farewell, and left. Over time, Kyle and Arlette became friends, fell in love, and eventually got married. However, the nobles disapproved of King Kyle's marriage to Arlette as she was a commoner. One day, Arlette mysteriously disappeared. Kyle became increasingly occupied with the war against the monsters, and later, he and Maria began assembling a team to defeat the Beast King. During this journey, Maria supported the great Lua, hoping for victory over the forces of evil. However, the situation remained dire, and the knights were becoming severely exhausted. One day, Kyle unexpectedly encountered Arlette at a military camp. It was then that Kyle learned about Castle. They were reunited, and after a few days, Kyle obtained the great sword, Aya, to slay the Beast King. The final battle between the knights and the monsters ensued. Tragically, Ilia sacrificed herself to save a family of commoners fleeing from the monsters. She sustained a fatal wound and perished. The ultimate battle between Kyle and the Beast King was brutal. Maria was overwhelmed by the sheer power emanating from both kings. In the end, Kyle struck the Beast King with a devastating blow from his sword. However, at that moment, the great sword lost its power for an unknown reason. The Beast King vanished. Kyle, writhing in pain, also disappeared into the dimensional rift. Maria was left in shock, unable to save her friend Kyle or Ilia. At that moment, Maria lost all hope in life. Her grief and anger turned her away from the great Lua, and she began supporting Lia instead, seeking a way to save King Kyle. It is revealed that she had been waiting for the moment when the dimensional rift would open again so that she could enter and find Kyle. This was the reason she remained alongside the evil sorcerer all this time. Returning to the present, everyone is astonished by Maria's story. Loren tells her that they all share the same desire to save King Kyle. Maria responds that things aren't that simple anymore. She explains that the rift has already opened, and from it emerged the very Kyle she had been searching for all these years. Everyone is shocked by the revelation that King Kyle has returned. They ask Maria if he is alright. Maria tells them that Kyle has indeed returned, but he now exists as the Dark King, Angmund. The group is left in disbelief. They realize that Castle must now fight his own father, King Kyle. However, Castle says that this means there is still hope. They can save King Kyle from the darkness that controls him. Maria warns him not to get his hopes up, reminding him that Lua will not support him now, just as she abandoned them before. Still, Castle remains determined to save his father. At that moment, they notice that Pavel has regained consciousness and immediately rush to him. Pavel decides to break the final seal on the great sword. As the seal is released, the sword's energy surges through Castle. Pavel tells Castle to claim the sword before the Dark Lord does. At the same time, the evil sorcerer and the Dark King sense the reawakening of the great sword. The next morning, Castle sets off to retrieve the sword and put an end to the Dark King. Loren asks Celine to accompany Castle and support him. She assures Celine that she will protect the forest herself. Celine agrees and departs with Castle on their urgent journey. And on the next day, the princess sends a message to the royal advisor, Beale, explaining everything that happened during the expedition and the solution they found to defeat the King of Beasts. In the evening, we see Castle and his friends on their way to the sword, and they camp in the forest. We see the girls talking in the forest, feeling worried about the situation they are getting into and the fierce battle that will take place between Castle and his father, King Kyle. But they praise Castle, saying that he is a loyal and kind-hearted person, and that his heart is as strong as the mighty sword flowing within him. Fry is worried about Castle facing the King of Darkness, afraid that he might end up like King Kyle. But Celine tells her that no one can enter this battle except Castle, because if they interfere, they will all surely die. She says that they must trust Castle and themselves before entering the battle, or else death will be their certain fate. Fry then encourages herself and tells them that from the very first day of the journey, she decided that she would protect Castle no matter what and under all circumstances. After that, they go to sleep to prepare for the adventure the next day. And we see everyone all over the world waiting for the decisive moment, the start of the final battle that will determine the fate of the world. On the next morning, we see Demia and Klaus on their way to the World Tree to meet the princess there. We also see Rhett and the princess on their way to the World Tree, and they are getting very close. The princess tells Rhett to prepare to fight the King of Darkness as soon as they meet Castle. Rhett responds that all he cares about is killing the evil sorcerer who murdered his friends and that he is ready to do anything to achieve that goal. Meanwhile, Castle and his friends are also on their way to the World Tree. Fry keeps thinking about what Maria said and feels worried that Castle might end up like King Kyle. At that moment, Fry stops Castle to talk to him about her fears. He replies that they must defeat the King of Darkness, even if he is his father, King Kyle. He admits that he is truly worried, but hearing Maria's story made him think carefully. He realized that King Kyle fought the King of Darkness and sacrificed himself to save the world, which made him respect King Kyle more than he fears meeting the same fate. He adds that King Kyle did all of this to protect the people dear to him, and since Castle also wants to protect those he cares about, he will fight just as bravely as King Kyle. At that moment, the princess and Rhett arrive at the world tree. Rhett sees the great sword and immediately moves toward it. He tries to grab and pull it from the ground with all his strength and successfully lifts it. He thinks to himself that now, he will definitely be able to take revenge for his friends. The princess is surprised by his actions and asks him what he is doing. She tells him that Dominic said only the crown prince can wield the sword and that he must give it to Castle so that he can defeat the King of Darkness. Rhett replies, "And where is Castle now? Wait for them to come and help you, just as you want. But I have more important things to take care of." The princess tries to stop him, but he raises the sword at her angrily and tells her that he will avenge his friends himself and does not need anyone's help. At that moment, the evil sorcerer and the King of Darkness arrive at the world tree. The sorcerer tells the King of Darkness that he is certain the sword is here. They try to enter the world tree's domain, but a powerful magical barrier stops them. However, the King of Darkness uses his destructive power, obliterating the barrier with a devastating attack. The power of darkness spreads across the area, but the King of Darkness's strength runs out, and he tells the sorcerer that he must regain his power. The sorcerer tells him that he will take care of the sword and retrieve it immediately. We see Rhett and the princess amid the spreading darkness, confused about what is happening. Suddenly, the sorcerer appears before them. Rhett becomes furious and attacks the sorcerer with all his strength, and the princess helps him. But their attacks have no effect at all. Instead, the sorcerer overpowers them, striking Rhett and leaving him unable to fight. The princess helps him again, and this time Rhett manages to land a blow on the sorcerer. The sorcerer becomes enraged and unleashes his full power, sending Rhett flying. Rhett keeps dodging his attacks quickly and gets close enough to trap him along with the princess. Finally, the princess succeeds in stabbing him through the heart with her sword. The sorcerer uses powerful magic to destroy her, but Rhett warns her in time, and she dodges the attack at the last moment. Rhett then charges at the sorcerer with astonishing speed and completely decapitates him, ending him once and for all. At that moment, the King of Darkness appears, leaving the princess and Rhett in shock at his incredible power. The King of Darkness moves toward the sacred sword, and the princess rushes to stop him from obtaining it. However, he unleashes a devastating attack at her, and Rhett saves her at the last moment. Unfortunately, the King of Darkness obtains the great sword in the end. The princess tries to reclaim the sword, but he is far stronger than her, easily blocking her attack and nearly finishing her off. At that moment, Demia appears and blocks the King of Darkness's attack. Klaus joins in, helping her repel the King of Darkness's assault. At that moment, Castle and his team arrive, and everyone prepares for the final battle against the King of Darkness. Castle checks on them to see if they are alright, and Klaus reassures him. The princess tells him that the sword in the hands of the King of Darkness is the great sword, and Castle is shocked. The King of Darkness then says, "So, you have finally arrived." Castle replies, "You are not the King of Darkness, you are King Kyle, and you must wake up." Everyone is stunned by Castle's words and does not understand what is happening. But the King of Darkness attacks Castle with all his strength. Castle struggles to resist, and Cleo assists him with her magic, but it is useless. Castle keeps resisting, trying to awaken King Kyle by reminding him of the people he loves, including his mother, but to no avail. The battle between Castle's team and the King of Darkness continues, and they realize they cannot do anything to him unless they take the sword. Everyone attacks the King of Darkness at the same time, but he defeats them all. Castle continues fighting fiercely until he successfully knocks the sword out of the King of Darkness's hands. The King of Darkness becomes even more enraged and unleashes his full power, drawing his own sword and preparing a devastating attack to finish off Castle. Roy charges at him, trying to stall for time so that Castle can get the great sword. Castle dashes at full speed and successfully retrieves the sword, activating its power. At that moment, the King of Darkness launches an extremely powerful and destructive attack, obliterating the entire area and defeating everyone. However, Castle remains standing, resisting thanks to the power of the sword. He gathers his strength, encourages himself, and launches a ferocious assault on the King of Darkness. The battle between them continues, and Castle keeps fighting. His friends try to help him, preventing the King of Darkness from moving. Cleo casts a powerful magical attack at him, but they are shocked to see that the King of Darkness is completely unaffected. The battle between the King of Darkness and Castle continues, but then the King of Darkness launches a fatal attack at Castle once again. Rhett pushes Castle out of the way and takes the hit instead, suffering great pain. Castle asks if he is okay. At that moment, Maria appears, using her power to trap the King of Darkness inside iron bars, but he easily destroys them. Castle then takes the opportunity to strike, stabbing him in the chest with his sword. Maria suddenly remembers what happened to Kyle, and Fry also becomes worried about Castle. The dark energy starts wrapping around the great sword, draining Castle's strength. Fry rushes toward him, trying to help, but he tells her to stay away. She does not listen, and the dark energy strikes her as well. She struggles against it and cries, not wanting to lose Castle. The evil energy intensifies, and she faints. The dark energy wraps around Castle too, about to completely take control of him. But then, something strange happens. Ilya's pendant suddenly reacts, rising into the sky and glowing brightly. A magic circle appears from the pendant, granting Castle immense power. He successfully eradicates the darkness and completely destroys the King of Darkness. King Kyle returns to his true form. He falls to the ground and says he is happy that Lua's great wish has finally been fulfilled. He welcomes Castle as his son. Castle is surprised that his father recognizes him. Kyle tells him that he always heard his voice while he was trapped in the darkness. Maria is confused and asks what he means, saying, "Didn't Lua betray you?" Kyle replies, "No, I was the one who suppressed the power of the great sword myself so that Lua's wish could come true and my son could become the crown prince." He apologizes to Maria for everything that happened and for worrying her. At that moment, King Kyle bids farewell to his son, Castle, and his childhood friend, Maria, before disappearing completely. At last, the era of darkness ends, and peace returns to the world after the final defeat of the King of Darkness. Maria thanks Castle for saving Kyle and for saving the world. She bids them farewell and leaves. Everyone is overjoyed by the final victory and the return of peace to the world. After the final battle, the presence of monsters gradually decreases. Everyone returns to their homeland happily. Red is now seen as a hero by the people of Orphelia, and the discrimination against black-skinned demons in the kingdom completely ends. Red is officially recognized as a noble, and peace and joy spread throughout the world.